Stream Centered Eagle, do you copy?
Yep, I have JB.
Updated location, Jim. Where are you?
We are over Anna Maria now, Anna Maria Island, Holmes Beach.
10-4. We are starting our stream in 20 seconds. We got everything ready to go. Just wanted to touch base with you before we do.
All right, we're going to stay here for about another 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and then head north along Pinellas.
10-4, Jim. I got you. Stand by for stream.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, folks. JB here with you live on Tracking the Tropics on WFLA Now. Eagle 8 HD is over Anna Maria Island on the south end of Tampa Bay, where the cleanup continues after Hurricane Helene making landfall in Florida's Big Bend as a Category 4 monster on Thursday night. Many folks still returning to their homes, their neighborhoods, even today, and seeing this damage for the first time. Anna Maria Island, one of the areas, of course, hit on the Gulf Coast, on Florida's Gulf Coast. Eagle has done multiple survey flights today and continues with this flight over Anna Maria Island. And we will be heading north into the Pinellas County area in the minutes ahead with photojournalist Jim Hockett. Jim, just checking in with what you've seen thus far. There's some roof damage I see you zooming in on.
Yeah, it looks like part of this condo roof got damaged, and then another one right up here. Yeah, the shopping center took a hit too.
I think we saw this one with our flight on Friday. We were actually remarking that we were surprised that there wasn't even more roof damage just like this. Now sitting down with Max Defender 8 Chief Meteorologist Jeff Barardelli, who's coming in for the shows tonight. Hey there, Jeff.
Hey, yeah. There's damage to those high-end dry marinas all across the Bay Area as well that I've heard of, obviously being next to the water.
And so we're live over Anna Maria Island with a flight that's going to take us north towards Pinellas. And Jeff, let's just check in with you. It's the first time we're hearing from you since, this past Friday when we were on stream together.
Yep.
Observations. One thing I think that's become abundantly clear is that your warnings about this impacting states moving inland into Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, even into Tennessee and Kentucky, that those warnings were, proved to be just a terrible outcome that actually came to fruition.
We are a local TV station. We obviously here at WFLA in Tampa serve the Tampa area, but in every single one of my weathercasts last week, every single one of the big ones, I talked about the Carolinas because I knew what was coming. But I think regardless of what weather people and meteorologists knew about the Tampa Bay area, the coastline, or what was happening in the mountains of western North Carolina and Georgia and South Carolina and Tennessee, that is still... It's hard to translate words and numbers into actual impacts and what that's going to look like on the ground. And I think that I see it that way for our area as well, because when you look at the barrier islands in and around the Tampa Bay area, including places like South Tampa or anywhere along Tampa Bay, I think regardless of the stuff that I said, which was we're going to have 2 to 3 feet of extra surge on top of what we had with the Dahlia, it still doesn't square until you actually see what that means, JB. It's one thing to say, get out of the way, storm surge is coming. Wait, the storm's going to be 150 miles away, but, the center of the storm, but we're still going to get this crazy amount of storm surge. I don't think that, words justify what we see in pictures, JB. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and the death count is higher in North Carolina than it is in the state of Florida, at least from what we know thus far. I think perhaps one of the most grim numbers that we have thus far is 102 people dead, and that's what we know about.
Yeah.
There's hundreds more missing.
I'm not surprised, though. That's the thing. There's a disconnect between what meteorologists know, because it's like staring down the barrel of a shotgun sometimes as meteorologists. We see the disaster that's about to unfold, and they issued high-risk, flood warnings, which is rare. But people don't get it. They don't understand that these are truly rare meteorological phenomenons. You wouldn't hear me. I said so many times on television in Tampa, which is, to some degree doesn't reach, obviously, the people
That's
in
what I was going to say. It doesn't,
Yeah.
your words, obviously,
Right.
being a local meteorologist here, doesn't reach the Carolinas.
That's right. But you can imagine their meteorologists were saying the same thing as me, right? They're there. And still, no matter what they said, screaming bloody murder couldn't possibly have resonated in people's minds to understand what it really meant that whole towns would be wiped off the map like they were in the mountains, in the Southern Appalachians.
So Eagle 8 HD zooming in there a short time ago, just showing one of the area, seeing U-Haul trucks all over the place, dumpsters, utility vehicles that are used to transport and dump off sand, just clearing roadways. This is a day where we're seeing just a ton of activity as far as cleanup. But the one thing I've seen more than anything else, Jeff, is just piles of belongings. I don't even want to call it debris. Debris to me, people think, a dock that's been smashed to smithereens.
Yep.
It's more of
Everything.
bookshelves, clothes,
Couches.
couches, appliances, televisions that are all just, plopped onto front lawns all over the viewing area. We've seen it all the way up in Citrus County, all the way down to Pinellas, and it's from flood damage, storm surge.
There's some things you can't move. Refrigerators are going to stay on the first floor. If you're on the first floor on the Barrier Islands, there's not much you could do about that. I just hope that people move their pictures, the stuff that they can't replace. They're real valuable items.
The sentimental stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I had a friend write me the day before the storm, says, hey, should I move my car from the Barrier Island to the mainland? I'm going to stay in my condo on Indian Rocks Beach. Should I move my car? And I wrote, yes, please get your car out of there. And I don't know if people either they didn't realize what was going to happen, or they just, because they've been through this so many times, and so many times it doesn't turn out to be as bad as maybe they thought it was, or as bad as what the TV people were saying, that they just didn't think that it was going to be that bad. The storm's going to move 100, 150 miles away, the eye of the storm. So it's not going to be that bad, right? And that's what was different about this system. It was a huge storm, and huge storms produce a lot more storm surge. And we tried to, make that clear on air, but I still think translating that into, by the way, get everything out of your garage, get everything off the first floor of your home if you're located on the Barrier Island. That kind of stuff probably didn't make it, and people didn't realize what they were going to be up against. And, I think because this area hasn't seen a surge like this in over 100 years, that people just couldn't possibly imagine what it meant for a storm to go so far away from us, the eye of the storm, but still for the damage to be so bad here, because we got the meat of the storm here in the Bay Area.
Because of how lopsided the storm was, something that we noted on Tracking the Tropics. Let me ask you this. If somebody on one of these barrier islands did heed the warnings of local officials, meteorologists like yourself, and they did get things off the ground, let's say they got it off, let's say 18 inches off the ground.
Not enough. Be enough. No. They would have needed to bring their important stuff to the second floor of their home. And that's the only way, because a lot.
So
let's put it this way.
We see it a lot because people will move like a couch up off the ground with
it's not enough
blocks.
Unfortunately for this storm, it wasn't enough. So let me just say, my buddy is the manager of the Bay Pines Marina. Been a friend of mine for 30 years. Manager of the Bay Pines Marina in Bay Pines in Pinellas County. They had 3 feet of water inside the high and dry marina. Okay, the trailer park, which is located there, was like a lot of the mobile homes were demolished, which he tells me. So the bottom line here is, and that was the Bay Pines Marina is on the bay, but it's not on the Barrier Island. It's actually inside a little bit on the Intracoastal. So it gives you an idea of, you really had to put anything that was really valuable on your second floor, or just put it on a truck and get it out of town. You know what I mean?
That also means that
these are logistical nightmares.
The first floor, the first level of your home's getting basically decimated.
That means you're going to need new plaster. It means you're going to need new appliances. and it means that there's going to be a lot of damage. And this was lost in translation, JB. It was lost in translation.
Yeah, we've got commenters like David saying not many believed. Veronica in our comment section saying not everyone has television or may not even listen to the television.
That's right.
I mean,
Yep.
yeah,
it's impossible. It's such a hard sphere to communicate in when everybody is using, one person's using YouTube, one person's using web, one person's using television. It gets lost. It used to be everyone watched one TV station or one of 3 or 4 TV stations. Everyone had the same message. They all understood. Now people are tuned out. They don't have cable. They don't, it's a really difficult sphere to communicate in. And people oftentimes are split between 50 things. Their attention is not focused on one thing. Oh, and by the way, they've been warned 5 times in the last 10 years that storm surge would become a problem. And this time was the biggie. Whereas the last few times, maybe it fell short of their expectations.
One conversation that you've had at great length, Jeff. Yeah, I know you probably have to get ready for shows. I just want to get you out on this.
No, I have a meeting with the boss.
Oh, that's right.
Yes.
Why don't you come on back? Because I want to talk to you about, I want to talk to you about one other thread. As soon as I'm
done with the boss, I'll be back.
All right. Okay. Chief Meteorologist Jeff Berardelli, meeting with station management because a lot to go through here today. And Eric's going to come sit down with us, meteorologist Eric Stone, as we look there now at the Pinellas County beaches. There's the famous Don Cesar. And let's check in with Jim Hockett in Eagle 8 HD, confirming that is the direction you are heading next, Jim. Or not. Okay, so Jim, I don't have your audio, but
sorry about that, JB. Yeah, we're heading north. This is Egmont Key here.
Oh yeah. Great shot. Your shot's coming through crystal clear, Jim. And so yes, to confirm you're heading towards the Pinellas Beaches, St. Pete Beach?
Yep, we're gonna cross over past the grill and pass it down Cesar, then work our way north along the coast as far as we can before we need to head for fuel.
Roger that. A great look here at Egmont Key. Yeah, Jim, we haven't really talked too much about Egmont Key, but, given that it is an island where, you don't have neighborhoods sprawling for miles and miles, it's just not going to get the same amount of attention as some of our coastal communities. But wow, look, there's the famous lighthouse there at Egmont Key. I've stood there several times, and looks like they still have standing water as a result of Helene.
Yeah, this island has seen its share of hurricanes, and it just keeps on going. The dock here seemed to have taken quite a hit, though.
Wow, yeah, that's the dock here at Egmont Key.
Yeah, this is where the harbor pilots come ashore.
Yeah, it's a popular destination for people to go check it out. I think I have a photo or two in front of the lighthouse. Now sitting down with meteorologist Eric Stone. Eric, we're just looking at Egmont Key. It looks like Eagle 8 HD is now heading north and heading for St. Pete Beach, Paso Grill, and Pinellas County overall.
Have we seen any damage to any piers, Pier 60 or any of the others in the Pinellas County coast?
That's a good question for Jim. Jim, do you got us?
Yep, I got you. It looked like the structure right at the beginning of the pier on Clearwater Beach, the roof of that got knocked out. The pier itself seemed to be okay, but I'm sure they're going to have to do structural inspections on it before they let anybody out there. This
Roger
area in past the grill, I'm sure, they've been going through a renourishment project, which has now taken a step back because of all of this. Yeah, this is where you've seen pictures, probably a lot of pictures of the cars buried in the sand.
You know, Eric, yeah, as Jim brings up the photos in the sand, there's been some conversations taking place on social media from what I have seen about the correlation between all of this sand and the beach renourishment, projects that have been taking place in the Tampa Bay area. More sand, of course, on our beaches means more beach, but it also means more sand for a hurricane to toss about as it would, right? So, I mean, here's Jim. You got a great shot here of it looks like a team that's trying to dig out one particular vehicle, but
yeah,
looks
I
like
was just
there's a
looking at
couple
that. As we get closer, we'll be able to get a better look at that.
Yeah, that's the thing with beach renourishment projects. Without a storm, it's great, but as soon as a storm like this comes along, all of a sudden that excess sand is just drove inland, and I think we saw more buried cars where there was a a previous renourishment at the beach than we did where it wasn't.
as we look here, yeah, now Jim's got a great shot of them digging out what appears to be a pickup truck.
I bet it's theirs.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can see that car right next to it is, buried in the sand.
I think there's another one even further up.
Well, what's interesting,
I saw another one further up.
What's interesting, it looks like they are clearly clearing a path. You just hope that it's kind of, man, I'll tell you what, it reminds me of snow day where I grew up, right? When you would have a massive snowstorm. If your car was in a really bad spot, they would have to plow, and your car could get buried in snow if your car was in a precarious position. And it looks like that might be the case here with a lot of vehicles that are stuck in sand. But if they're in a bad spot and already stuck in sand, they might get even more buried in sand when the plow comes through. Look at all these cars that are just surrounded.
These are all disabled, totaled cars. And there's a ton of them up and down the streets. Because if there's that much sand, then the water level had to be at least that high, right? And once the water gets in the car, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, especially salt water.
Yeah. So even though they're digging that pickup truck out, unfortunately, it's guaranteed it's totaled. All of those.
Yeah, look at this. So that sand there up at least, 2/3 of the way up those tires, and we have seen some vehicles buried in sand up to, really at the windshield.
Yeah.
It's it's sort of a bit of an unexpected twist with Helene. Eric, you've seen a lot of storms, and Jim, you've been an Eagle for a lot of storms, and it feels like every time we fly Eagle in the aftermath of a hurricane or a tropical storm, we see something different. We were talking earlier about the storm or the boats piled up after Ian in Fort Myers. Have either of you ever seen cars buried in sand like that?
No, and I've seen a lot. I've seen a lot of damage along the coast. Again, I really do believe that when you transport sand to a beach on a normal day, and you've got a deeper beach, right? You've got a couple feet of sand. Oh, you want to make it nice and soft and this and that. That sand is easily movable compared to the packed sand that's already there, right, from nature. And I really believe that that's why we're seeing these cars that are buried in sand, where in other places like, from north of St. Pete Beach into Clearwater Beach and even further to the north, we didn't see that, JB, right? I don't think Eagle 8 saw that either. It just seems like where the sand has been added to the beach is very loose and easily movable with that water.
Jim, you ever seen
I was
anything
thinking
like
the exact same thing. Yeah, I was thinking the exact same thing, that it's very soft sand. It's not that hard packed sand that that the beach that's been there a while, has. This is freshly, fresh sand put down. So it's like you said, it's going to be easily movable.
This is a good locator for people. The Don Cesar in St. Pete Beach, the famous Pink Hotel, right there on the Gulf Coast.
We can.
And Eagle 8 HD looking at Pass-A-Grill here.
Yeah, I think all this piping right here is part of that renourishment project.
Wow.
Meaning it was covered before this, right?
Yeah. I'm not sure if it's covered or not, but I know it's part of the project.
I remember shoveling. I remember JB shoveling your car out of snow.
Oh yeah. You know, it's grueling work because it feels, sometimes you'll feel like you'll get in, you know, a dozen clumps and you'll barely put a dent in.
Yeah.
It, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You see, the guys are just like,
oh, look at that
"Man."
roof.
Oh wow, here's some
didn't
roof
know.
damage in the foreground.
Yeah, so there is some wind damage.
And shoveling is hard work. I mean, it puts stress on you, especially considering the weather. I mean, the feels like temperature is 105 outside. I mean, if you're not drinking water and staying hydrated, you could easily pass out with sunstroke.
I hope everybody down there is taking care of one another, and you know, for people, guys, it's just not as simple as running to your local 7-Eleven to pick up drinks. A lot of this area has seen devastation to the point where things are still, in large part, shut down, inaccessible. Yeah, there perhaps will be some conversations about correlation between beach replenishment and the sand that made its way what appeared to be a couple of football fields inland.
Oh, easily. Yeah.
Onto our roadways, and that cleanup is going to be its own problem. Its own. You noted earlier, Eric, about sand getting everywhere. I mean, folks, you ever go to the beach and sand gets into your car and it gets everywhere, even after you've cleaned yourself off? You think that you've gotten all the sand off of you, and yet somehow you look at the bottom of your car when you get home and there's just sand everywhere. Think of that on an exponential scale beyond comprehension. That's what we're dealing with here, with sand making its way into these neighborhoods and into these communities.
And into people's houses.
Right.
Just another aspect of the cleanup.
Now we're in the St. Pete Beach area, coming up on Sunset Beach.
I mean, luckily we haven't seen nearly as much roof damage in regards to the strong wind.
Yeah, we were noting that earlier, how it's almost a bit shocking that there aren't more rooftops just torn from each structure. We've seen torn rooftops and damaged roofs, but a lot less than what we were expecting. Again, every storm does a different type of damage, and we can point to 5 different storms, and the flights from Eagle will look different all 5 times because each storm has their own characteristics. This one, I've just never seen this much sand come ashore before.
Yeah.
Ever. We've covered storm surge, okay, not historic storm surge like we've had with the record-breaking storm surge with Helene. However, just this much sand getting pushed onto our streets, and like, there's a great shot from Jim. I mean, into structures. Look at that.
Yeah, the water recedes, but the sand just stays. I can't remember the last event where we had, you know, a decent amount of surge to where any of that loose sand would have been pushed, you know, even a football field inland. a couple hundred yards. And so that sand that has been loose there for years and years and years and years finally got pushed away from that storm surge. And there it is. You can see it just left behind. It's a shame that the water doesn't take the sand back with it as it recedes, but it doesn't. We wouldn't have beaches if that was the case.
Eagle 8 HD over St. Pete Beach, just south of Treasure Island. And this continues on for, what, I believe miles? All of this sand displacement?
Up and down the coast. All the way up to Citrus County, all the way up to Cedar Key, all the way into Perry.
I mean, you're right. It's a regional problem. Look at this. Look at this. Oh, is that? Hey, Jim.
The DeLorean.
That's the DeLorean that we got pictures of. You found it. Look at that.
That's been moved, right? I don't think it was there. I thought it was right up against a house.
I'm not
I wonder
sure
if the floodwater actually moved it. I bet it did.
That's pretty mind-boggling. We had received a photo on WFLA.com/reported of a DeLorean stuck in the sand in this area at the Pinellas beaches. And there it is. Why is this noteworthy for those unfamiliar with the DeLorean? An exceptionally rare vehicle, one that, of course, was the centerpiece of the Back to the Future trilogy, the movies. You don't see too many DeLoreans anymore. Obviously, they only made DeLoreans for a short period of time. And to see one in the middle of, storm aftermath with Hurricane Helene like this, it's bizarre. But especially considering if you have a DeLorean, and it is an exceptionally rare car, you wouldn't want it anywhere close to a Category 4 hurricane. So
there were a couple older cars. It looked like one of those old Rabbits. You remember those? A couple of 80s cars that were in there.
It might have been a car collector here by the beach that just couldn't get their cars out in time. It might be that simple.
Or just didn't realize. I don't know if you remember last week while we were streaming, a friend of mine has a place at Reddington Beach and said, hey, should I move my car? And I called him up. I said, yeah, you got to get it out of there. And he said, well, it's elevated and it hasn't flooded in 20 years. And I said, man, I tell you, I wouldn't take a chance because I'm betting it's going to flood. And he got back to me today and he showed me pictures, unfortunately, and the water was higher than the seats. And he has an SUV.
Here we have some, are those, what are they, power crews or dump trucks? I'm trying to see.
Yeah, I think they're power crews.
Yeah, it appears to be power crews making their way through the area.
The first step is to get the sand off the roads.
That's right.
That's the first step.
We were talking about this Friday, clearing the roads, and then powers too, really. I mean, that's the next step.
And then the step after that is getting those pounds of sand somehow off the side of the road.
But you could see why they've limited the access to these barrier islands to just residents. I mean, can you imagine if just anybody could come out here?
What else are you going to do out there?
I should probably so you got to get the roads clear. Then, of course, there's the humanitarian crisis. You're trying to deal with any potential rescues, anybody that did stay behind, any pet rescues. You're just trying to minimize loss of life, get supplies out to necessary people, get people out of there, and then probably, look, power and everything else that you need to deal with to just begin the initial phase of getting Pinellas County back up on its feet. But this is considerable
you can see
more
this
traffic.
Beach right here is going to need a renourishment project again.
Look at that, yeah.
Look how much of that beach is gone.
This is way more traffic than what we saw on Friday, so there's clearly activities picking up, and it's going to be weeks, months, years potentially, but.
And there's going to be a lot of people and businesses that mentally, it's very draining, and they may just say, "Hey, I quit. I'm out of here," and places will be demolished. There'll be a lot of open areas of land, and a couple of years down the road, like even in Fort Myers Beach right now, you can say, "Wow, I remember the house that used to be here. I remember the business that used to be here," and it costs too much to try to rebuild just in case this happens again.
It's just all these piles of sand. Now that the road has been cleared in a lot of different areas, multiple roadways being plowed, almost as if it was a snowstorm.
And the
You have
sand's
all
still in
these
the road.
piles right on the side of the road, creates its own complications because less room for you to put stuff out on the front lawn or the front section of your home.
And look at the road, JB. You can't even you still can't see the road.
It's just sand.
Yeah, you've got piles of sand on the side of the road, yet you hardly see any black asphalt whatsoever because, like I said earlier, it gets in the nooks and crannies. And just like snow, when you plow a road, there's still some snow on the road. It doesn't all come off. Same thing with the sand. Look at that white structure. I mean, sand is just piled all around it.
Yeah, I remember seeing this spot. I believe it was on our Friday flight. I mean, a dock and what appears to be a lift just thoroughly wrecked. I mean, just blown apart. Here's that boat. It's still it's like dangling off that lift.
Yeah.
It looks like it could fall if you
blow on it.
Yep. I mean, it looks like it's about to come down.
And the other boat washed ashore.
There's a boat that's completely out of the water and just sitting over by these balconies.
And look at all the debris around it, too.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is some of the more significant damage just from a debris standpoint that we have seen in all of our flights. That spot got hit pretty hard. Thankfully, it looks like the overpass there, that little bridge is clear.
There's a boat on the dock.
Right on the dock.
Yep.
Just kind of pushed onto that dock where it came to a rest, and again, kind of dangling off the side there.
You wonder how high those lifts were. If those boats had been there the whole time, maybe the water level didn't quite reach it. They look pretty high, the ones that are there.
I mean, you got to think that these boats were in the water.
Yes.
I mean, they're elevated off the surface of the water now, but they were in the water during Helene, or in the aftermath during really that initial storm surge.
We got to start heading to Albert Whitted for fuel, and then we'll be back up for the 5 and the 6.
Roger that, Eagle. Any parting thoughts here, Eric, while I have you?
I mean, it's, like Jeff said, words can't really describe, what was expected. We could say, hey, it's going to be this storm surge, it's going to be this or that. But until you really see it, and, you and I talked about it last week, until you experience something like this, you can't really fathom the damage that this could do. And, this is a storm 100 miles away. It wasn't even a storm that was the center anywhere near us, and it did this much damage. And it really just goes to show the power of these hurricanes.
A Category 4 storm that was how many miles off?
It was about 100 from St. Pete.
So 100 from St. Pete.
Yeah.
Category 4 storm, 100 miles off St. Pete, causing this level of damage. No doubt that will be part of the story.
That pier's gone.
Yeah, there's a pier that's completely gone. Part of the story that is written when they retire the name Helene, inevitably. And again, we've talked about it, but we're just one state that has experienced damage from this storm into Georgia, the Carolinas, immeasurable damage there, loss of life. I believe the latest that we had heard from North Carolina was a death toll in the 40s and expected to rise. I haven't heard any updates.
600 unaccounted for.
Absolutely. Yeah, it makes your heart fall into your stomach. So Eagle is heading back to refuel. We continue our streaming coverage from Eagle 8 HD on Tracking the Tropics. When Eagle's up in the air, we will continue to live stream and show everybody what we're seeing from the air. The air, of course, provides a very unique perspective because we can just see entire neighborhoods that have been impacted by Helene. But we also have crews on the ground as well. We're currently getting ready for the 4 o'clock newscast, first at 4, where we're going to be taking you inside many of these homes that were hit and had significant flood damage. I'm curious to see, one thing I'm curious to see, Eric, is that if we get into any homes in the newscast tonight that had not just water pushed in, but sand pushed in, like you noted, that, creates a whole other set of problems. But we will see, of course, tonight on WFLA News Channel 8. Eagles getting ready to land. We'll see you next time on the next live stream, the very latest on WFLA.com, the WFLA app.